was standing at the kitchen sink, staring out the window into nothing but fog. When I first saw the note, it wasn't there 2 minutes earlier. I had just poured myself a glass of water from the old enamel pitcher on the counter, set the glass down with a soft clink, and turned to grab a dish towel from the hook by the stove. When I looked back, a folded piece of plain white paper rested exactly where the glass had been. My name was written on the outside in neat, careful black ink. Jordan, not the name on my driver's license, not the alias. I gave the rental office when I paid cash this afternoon my real first name, the one almost no one had called me since college, the one I buried deep after everything with Emily went to hell. The cabin was dead quiet except for the low, steady hum of the ancient refrigerator and the soft, constant lap of water somewhere outside against the dock. Thick fog pressed against the big picture window like a living thing trying to force its way inside, swallowing everything beyond 10 feet. I could barely make out the dark suggestion of the wooden dock that jutted out into the lake, its edges blurred and ghostly. I didn't touch the note at first. My hand hovered 6 inches above it while my mind raced through every logical explanation. Maybe the previous guests left it and I just hadn't noticed. Maybe the rental owner had slipped it under the door earlier, and the draft from the window had carried it here. But the paper was perfectly centered, edges crisp, ink still slightly glossy, as if it had been written moments ago. And the handwriting, it was too precise, too personal. I finally picked it up. My fingers left faint, sweaty prints on the surface. Jordan, close the curtains in the living room. Do not turn on the porch light. Whatever you do, do not look toward the dock tonight. I read it 3 times, the words burning into my brain. The handwriting was steady, almost kind. No tremor, no hurry. Like someone had sat right here at this exact counter and written it while I was standing 6 feet away pouring water I no longer wanted. I hadn't told a single soul where I was going. Not my sister, who had been blowing up my phone for weeks with worried texts. Not my buddy Mike, who kept offering to meet for beers and talk it out. Not even the bored guy at the rental office when I handed over $300 in 20s and signed the waiver without reading it. I came to this isolated cabin in the Cascade Mountains to disappear for 10 days. No cell signal, no Wi-Fi, no one knowing my real name or what I was running from. Just me, the woods, the lake, and the silence I thought I needed to finally breathe again. So how the hell did the note know my name? I walked slowly into the living room, the floorboards creaking under my boots in a way that suddenly felt louder than it had any right to. The heavy linen curtains hung open, framing the wall of fog outside. The single lamp on the side table cast a warm, yellow circle that now seemed pathetic against the darkness pressing in from every side. The dock was invisible, just a darker smear in the white nothing. I reached for the curtains anyway. My hand stopped halfway, fingers brushing the rough fabric. Why was I even considering listening to a random piece of paper that had appeared out of thin air? This was insane. I should laugh it off, crumple it up, throw it in the wood stove, and go to bed like a normal person. But something about the way it was written made the skin on the back of my neck crawl. It didn't sound like a prank. It didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like someone who was watching me right now and was already disappointed that I hadn't moved faster. I yanked the curtain shut. The fabric whispered against the floorboards like a secret being told. The room instantly felt smaller. The lamp suddenly too bright. The wooden walls closing in. The air smelled faintly of Pine and old smoke and something else I couldn't place. Something damp and metallic. That's when I noticed the second note. It sat in the exact center of the coffee table. I had cleared that table myself when I carried my duffel bag inside 2 hours ago. I remembered setting my camera bag right there, the strap still draped over the arm of the couch. Now the note rested beside it like it had always belonged. Good, the curtains help, but you should have done it faster. It's already closer than it was last night. My mouth went dry. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Last night, I had only arrived this afternoon around 4. The owner told me the previous guest checked out yesterday morning. The cabin had been empty for nearly 24 hours. I had walked every room, checked every lock, made sure I was completely alone before the sun went down. I crumpled the first note in my fist and picked up the second. My hands were shaking now. I could feel my pulse hammering in my fingertips, in my temples, in my throat. I looked around the open living room and kitchen again, eyes darting from corner to corner. The front door was still dead-bolted. The chain lock was engaged. All the windows I had checked twice before sunset were closed and latched tight. The woods out here were thick, old-growth forest, the kind that made city people like me feel small and watched even in broad daylight. But I was alone. I had made damn sure, or at least I thought I was. I walked back to the kitchen on legs that felt disconnected from my body and started opening drawers and cabinets one by one, looking for anything out of place. Silverware rattled. Pots clanged. No extra keys. No hidden cameras that I could see. No footprints in the dust on the top shelves. Nothing moved except my own reflection staring back at me from the dark glass of the window, eyes wide and haunted. The third note slid out from under the refrigerator door as I slammed it shut. It landed on the tile floor right next to my boot with a soft, papery sound that made me jump back so hard I knocked the glass of water into the sink. It shattered with a sharp crack that echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. This note was shorter, the handwriting identical. Same careful loops on the J, same slight pressure on the downstrokes. Stop looking for cameras, there aren't any. You won't find me that way. I stared at the paper. How did it know I had been searching? I had only decided to do it 30 seconds earlier. My heart was pounding so hard now that I could hear it in my ears. A dull thud, thud, thud that matched the growing pressure behind my eyes. I backed up until my spine hit the counter, the edge digging into my lower back. My eyes swept the small open concept space. The living room with its stone fireplace and worn leather couch. The kitchen with its butcher block island. The short hallway that led to the single bedroom and bathroom. Every shadow suddenly looked wrong. The lamp in the living room cast long, shifting shapes across the wooden walls that seemed to breathe when I wasn't looking directly at them. I grabbed the biggest knife from the block on the counter. It felt ridiculous in my hand, cold steel against warm, sweaty palm, but the weight of it made me feel slightly less helpless. What good was a kitchen knife against something that could write notes and slide them under a refrigerator without a sound? Still, I gripped it tighter. I moved through the cabin room by room. Knife held out in front of me like some idiot in a bad movie. Bedroom first. The queen bed was neatly made, the quilt pulled tight. I ripped the covers back, dropped to my knees, and swept the flashlight on my phone under the frame. Dust bunnies. Nothing else. Closet next. Empty hangers. A spare blanket, folded on the shelf. Bathroom. I yanked the shower curtain aside so hard the rings rattled. Empty tub. Medicine cabinet mirror reflecting my own pale face back at me, stubble dark against my jaw, eyes bloodshot from the long drive. No footprints, no breathing, no one. When I came back to the kitchen, the 3 notes were still on the counter exactly where I left them, the broken glass glittering in the sink like accusation. I read the latest one again. Stop looking for cameras. There aren't any. You won't find me that way. The words felt heavier now, like they were sinking into my chest. I glanced at the front door again. Deadbolt still thrown, chain still on. The fog outside pressed harder against the glass, swirling slowly like it was breathing in rhythm with me. Then the 4th note appeared. It didn't slide or fall. It simply materialized on top of the stack while I was looking straight at the counter. 1 second, 3 notes. The next, 4. The new one was longer. Jordan, you came here because of what happened with Emily. You think if you sit in the dark long enough, the guilt will loosen its grip. It won't. But I can help you with that if you let me. First instruction, turn off every light in the cabin except the one above the kitchen sink. Do it now. My knees almost buckled. The knife clattered onto the counter. Emily. The fight. The things I said in anger that I could never take back. The way her face had crumpled right before she walked out the door for the last time. The police report I never filed because I was too ashamed. The voicemail I still hadn't deleted. I hadn't told anyone the full story. I had barely admitted the worst parts to myself on the long drive up here. Windows down. Radio off. Just the sound of my own breathing in the road. No one on this planet should know that name in connection to me out here in the middle of nowhere. Yet the note knew. It knew everything. I stood there in the half-dark, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to bolt for the door, run to the car, drive until the fog lifted and the sun came up. But the car was parked 20 yards away, down a gravel path I couldn't even see right now. And the thought of stepping outside into that white nothing made my stomach twist. I reached up with a trembling hand and killed the living room lamp. Then the hallway light. Then the bedroom light. One by one, until only the single bulb above the kitchen sink remained, casting a weak yellow circle on the counter and the growing pile of notes. The cabin changed instantly. It felt tighter, more intimate, more dangerous. The wooden beams overhead seemed lower, the corners deeper. Outside, the soft, wet, dragging sound started again, like something heavy and slick being pulled slowly across wet wood. Then silence. The note had been right. Something was already closer than it was last night. I picked up the latest note. The handwriting had shifted just slightly. Still neat, but now it looked almost eager. Thank you, you're doing well. Most people fight the first few instructions. They usually don't last very long after that. I swallowed hard, throat clicking. The dragging sound came again, closer, definitely coming from the direction of the lake. I wanted to look. Every instinct screamed at me to pull the curtain back just an inch and see what was out there on the dock. My hand twitched toward the fabric, but the note had been very clear. Do not look toward the dock. I stayed exactly where I was, back pressed against the counter, staring at the notes, knife forgotten on the wood beside them. That's when the 5th note appeared right in front of me. It wasn't on the counter. It was in my hand. I had been holding the previous note, and suddenly there was a new sheet underneath it. Same paper, same ink. Warm, like it had just been written by someone standing inches away. Smart boy, you didn't look. Keep listening and you might make it until morning. But there's something you should know. I'm not the one who left these notes for you. I'm the one who's still here, waiting for you to finish reading them. My blood turned to ice. The paper in my hand suddenly felt alive, pulsing faintly in time with my heartbeat. Outside, the sound from the dock changed. It wasn't dragging anymore. It was footsteps. Slow, wet, deliberate. Coming up the path toward the cabin, I looked down at the counter. New notes were appearing every few seconds now, multiplying across the wood like mold spreading in fast motion. All of them addressed to me. All of them knowing things they had no right to know. My mother's maiden name on one. The exact words I whispered to Emily the night she left on another. The scar on my left knee from a childhood bike accident on a third. And every single one started the same way. Jordan? The footsteps reached the porch steps. 1 creak. 2. I could hear the wet drag of something heavy being pulled across the wooden planks right outside the front door. The notes kept coming, faster now, stacking up until they spilled onto the floor. I didn't dare move. The single bulb above the sink flickered once, then held. That's when the 6th note slid out from beneath the pile and stopped against my knuckles. Second instruction: whatever you hear next, do not open the door. Some things are better left outside until morning. You're already doing better than the last person who stayed here. He looked. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. I could hear it breathing, slow, wet, patient. And somewhere in the fog, far off but getting closer, another set of footsteps started. The breathing right outside the front door was slow and wet, like lungs full of lake water, trying to draw air through something that wasn't quite a mouth anymore. It didn't rasp or growl. It just existed, patient and close, separated from me by 2 inches of old pine and a deadbolt I suddenly didn't trust. My back was still pressed against the kitchen counter, the single bulb above the sink throwing a sickly yellow circle that barely reached the notes scattered across the wood. They kept multiplying. Every few heartbeats, another sheet appeared on top of the pile, ink still wet, paper warm like skin. I couldn't move. My legs felt nailed to the floorboards. The knife I'd grabbed earlier lay forgotten beside the growing stack, its blade catching the light in a way that made it look useless. The second instruction stared up at me from the top note. Whatever you hear next, do not open the door. Some things are better left outside until morning. You're already doing better than the last person who stayed here. He looked. The breathing paused, then resumed, closer if that was even possible. A soft, deliberate scrape followed it, something heavy shifting its weight on the porch planks. Then another set of footsteps started up again, farther out in the fog coming up the path from the dock. 2 of them now, maybe more. The sound was unmistakable. Wet boots, or something worse, dragging across gravel and wood, slow but steady, like they had all night. I forced myself to breathe through my mouth so I wouldn't make noise. The air tasted metallic, like blood and pine needles. My mind kept looping back to the same impossible fact. These notes, new things no one alive should know. Emily's name. The exact shade of blue her eyes turned when she cried. The way I'd slammed the kitchen cabinet so hard during our last fight that the hinge cracked. Details I'd buried so deep I sometimes convinced myself I'd imagined them. A new note materialized directly on top of the stack while I was staring at it. The handwriting was the same careful script, but the letters looked slightly larger now, almost urgent. Jordan, you're thinking about the fight again. Stop. It won't help. Third instruction. Sit down at the kitchen table and face the sink. Do not turn around no matter what you hear behind you. The table is safer. I stared at the paper. How did it know what I was thinking? I hadn't spoken out loud. I hadn't even moved my head. The pattern was starting to form, cold and clear. The notes didn't just appear randomly. They reacted. They anticipated. Every time my thoughts drifted to Emily, or the guilt or the urge to look outside, another one showed up with an instruction tailored exactly to pull me back. I didn't sit. I stayed exactly where I was, spine rigid against the counter, eyes locked on the window above the sink even though the curtains were drawn tight. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Outside, the second set of footsteps had reached the porch steps. Now there were two distinct breathing sounds, layered over each other, one right at the door, the other a little farther back, wet and rhythmic, like something trying to match my own breathing. Another note slid into existence, this one landing on the floor at my feet. You're resisting. That's why it's getting louder. Fourth instruction. Sit. Now. The table will keep the worst of it away for a while longer. I kicked the note away with my boot. It skittered across the tile and stopped against the fridge. My defiance felt good for half a second until every light in the cabin flickered at once, even the single bulb above me. The temperature dropped so fast I saw my breath fog in front of my face. The breathing at the door grew louder, wetter, almost excited. I lasted maybe 10 seconds before my knees gave out. I slid down the counter and sat hard on the floor, back still to the door, facing the sink like the note wanted. The wood was cold through my jeans. The notes kept coming, faster now, some of them fluttering down from nowhere to land in my lap or on my shoulders. I didn't brush them off. I was too scared to move anything but my eyes. The pattern was undeniable. Each instruction seemed designed to keep me small, contained, blind to whatever was gathering outside, and each one came with a little piece of knowledge that carved deeper into me. Fifth instruction, read the next note out loud. It will make the breathing stop for a minute. I didn't want to. God, I didn't. But the wet sounds were crawling inside my head now, filling the spaces between my thoughts. I picked up the note that had landed on my thigh. My voice cracked when I spoke. Jordan, you told Emily you wish she'd never been born. You said it while she was crying on the kitchen floor. You meant it in that moment. The words tasted like ash. I hadn't said them out loud to anyone. Ever. Not in therapy. Not in the middle of the night when the guilt woke me up sweating. The breathing at the door did stop, just for a few heartbeats. Then it started again, but slower, almost satisfied. I crumpled the note in my fist and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and fell behind the couch. Immediately, 3 more appeared on the table in front of me. The first one read, "Good, you're learning the pattern. The more you obey quickly, the longer the gaps between visits." The second, "You're wondering if this is some kind of haunted cabin prank. It's not. The last guest lasted until 3:17 a.m. He opened the door at 3:12. The third, 6th instruction, stand up, walk to the living room, and sit in the leather chair by the fireplace. Face the cold hearth. Do not look at the windows." I was shaking so badly my teeth clicked together. The pattern was locking in now. Obey. And the immediate threat pulls back a little. Resist and the sounds multiply. The air gets colder. The notes get meaner. was training me like a dog. And the worst part was how personal it felt, not just random terror. It knew my guilt. It was feeding on it. I stood up on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The floorboards groaned under my weight in a way they hadn't earlier, like the cabin itself was older and hungrier than when I arrived. I walked slowly into the living room, every step measured, eyes straight ahead. The leather chair creaked when I sat down, the cold from the unlit fireplace radiating against my face. Behind me, the front door rattled once. Not hard, just a testing push, like whatever was out there was checking if I was still following the rules. New notes started appearing on the arm of the chair, one every few seconds. I didn't pick them up at first. I just stared into the dark fireplace, trying to breathe normally. The air smelled wrong now. Not just pine and fog, but something faintly sweet and rotting, like flowers left too long in water. I finally looked down. The top note said, "You're doing well, Jordan. Most men break when the notes start quoting their worst memories. 7th instruction. Stay in this chair until I tell you otherwise. If you get up before then, the thing on the porch gets to come inside for 5 minutes." 5 minutes. The casual way it phrased it made my stomach turn, like this was a game with timed rounds, and I was losing points. Another note. "You still think you can run to the car when the sun comes up? You can't. The fog doesn't lift until the instructions are finished. The last guest tried to drive. We found his car halfway down the path with the door open and the engine running. I wanted to scream. Instead, I gripped the arms of the chair until my knuckles went white. The pattern was crystal clear now. The notes were a system. They observed, they predicted, they punished deviation with proximity and the thing, or things. Outside were getting bolder with every obeyed instruction, like the rules were giving them permission to get closer. A soft scratching started at the living room window behind me. Slow, deliberate nails or claws dragging across glass. I didn't turn. The instruction was clear, but the sound crawled up my spine anyway. 8th note. That's the one that looked. He heard the scratching too. He lasted another 43 minutes after that. My mind flashed to Emily again. Not the fight this time, but the morning after, when I woke up alone and found her note on the counter. 3 lines. "I can't keep doing this with you. Don't call me." I had crumpled it the same way I was crumpling these notes. The guilt had been a living thing inside my chest ever since. And now something out here was using it like bait. The scratching grew louder, more insistent. Then a new sound joined it. A low, wet voice that wasn't quite words. It sounded like it was trying to say my name, but the syllables were distorted by too much water. Dan? I squeezed my eyes shut. The notes kept coming, piling on the chair, some sliding into my lap. I could feel their weight. 9th note. "You're thinking about her note again." 10th instruction. "Read the next 3 notes out loud. Every word. It will make the voice stop." I didn't want to. But the voice outside said my name again, clearer this time, almost gentle. Almost like Emily used to say it when she was trying to calm me down after one of my rages. The sound broke something in me. I picked up the next note with trembling fingers. "Jordan, you never told anyone that you punched the wall so hard that night you broke 2 knuckles. You wrapped your hand yourself so no one would ask questions." My voice was hoarse when I read it aloud. The voice outside went quiet. 2nd note. "You told her the baby was probably better off not being born into this. You said it while she was still deciding whether to keep it." I choked on the words. The memory hit me like a physical blow. Emily had been 6 weeks along. We hadn't even told anyone yet. I had been terrified and angry, and I took it out on her. The voice outside stayed silent. Third note. She lost the baby 3 days after she left you. Stress, the doctor said. You've never let yourself think about that part, have you? I couldn't finish reading it out loud. My throat closed up. Tears burned my eyes for the first time in months. The scratching at the window stopped instantly, but now I could hear something moving around the side of the cabin, circling toward the back where the bedroom window was. The pattern had shifted again. The notes weren't just instructions anymore. They were excavation tools, digging up everything I'd buried and laying it out in neat black ink. And every time they dug deeper, the things outside got a little closer, a little bolder. I sat there shaking. The pile of notes, now a small mountain on my lap and the floor around the chair. The cabin felt smaller, the walls closer, the fog pressing in from every side like it wanted to swallow the whole building. My phone was in my pocket. No signal. I'd checked a dozen times. But I pulled it out anyway and tried to dial 911. The screen stayed blank. No bars. No nothing. 11th note appeared on top of the pile in my lap. You're reaching for escape. There isn't one. 11th instruction. Stay in the chair. The circling has to finish its loop. When it passes the back window, do not look. If you look, the instructions end and the real part begins. The real part. The words sat in my stomach like lead. I could hear it now. The slow, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. They passed the kitchen window, past the living room, headed toward the bedroom. The wet, dragging sound followed, like something heavy being pulled along behind it. I kept my eyes fixed on the cold fireplace. My hands were numb. The guilt was a living thing now, clawing at my ribs, fed by every note. I started to understand the pattern completely. The instructions weren't protecting me. They were preparing me, softening me, making sure that when whatever was out there finally came in, I would be too broken to fight. 12th note. You're starting to see it good. Most guests never make it this far into the pattern. 12th instruction. When the circling stops, count to 30 out loud. Then you can stand up and go to the bedroom. But only if you want the truth about why you really came here. The footsteps outside slowed, stopped. Right outside the bedroom window, I was sure of it. I started counting, voice barely above a whisper. 1, 2, 3. Each number felt like another nail in whatever was left of my sanity. The cabin was completely silent now except for my voice and the distant lap of lake water. No breathing, no scratching, just waiting. At 28, the notes started appearing again, faster than before, fluttering down like black snow. 29, 30. I stood up on legs that barely held me. The pile of notes cascaded to the floor. I walked toward the short hallway leading to the bedroom, every step deliberate, every nerve screaming at me to stop. The bedroom door was open. The room beyond was dark except for the faint glow of the fog pressing against the window. I could see the outline of the bed. The quilt still pulled tight from when I'd checked under it earlier. A single new note waited on the pillow. I stepped inside and picked it up. 13th instruction. Look under the bed again. The thing the last guest left behind is ready for you now. My stomach dropped. I dropped to my knees slowly, the floor cold against my palms. The flashlight on my phone shook as I turned it on and swept the beam under the bed. There was something there that hadn't been there before. A small wooden box, dark and old, tied with what looked like fishing line. And beside it, another folded note, this one yellowed with age. The handwriting on the old note was different, shaky, desperate. It was addressed to whoever stays here next. I reached for it with fingers that felt disconnected from my body. That's when the bedroom window behind me exploded inward in a shower of glass and fog. Glass exploded inward like a shotgun blast, shards, raining across the bedroom floor and slicing into the quilt and the wooden box I'd just uncovered. I threw myself backward on pure instinct, shoulder slamming into the nightstand so hard the lamp toppled and shattered beside me. The fog poured in through the broken window in thick, choking waves, carrying the smell of lake water and rot and something colder, like wet stone left too long in the dark. I scrambled on all fours toward the hallway, glass crunching under my palms, blood already welling from a dozen shallow cuts. The thing that came through the window didn't look human, not fully. It was tall and hunched, water streaming off its shoulders in sheets, skin glistening like it had just crawled up from the bottom of the lake. Its face was a blur of pale, sagging flesh and black hollows where eyes should have been. It didn't move fast. It didn't need to. It simply unfolded itself into the room, limbs too long, joints bending wrong, and the wet, dragging sound I'd heard all night followed it like a shadow. I made it to the doorway before the first note appeared on the floor, right in front of my face. 14th instruction, do not run, stand up, face it. It only wants to show you what you left behind. My breath caught. The thing stopped 3 feet away, head tilting like it was listening to the note too. Water dripped steadily from its fingers onto the floorboards, each drop landing with a sound too loud for the small room. I could smell it now. Not just rot, but something personal. Emily's perfume mixed with the metallic tang of blood. The exact scent of our apartment the night everything ended. I forced myself upright on shaking legs. Glass bit deeper into my knees through my jeans. The creature didn't lunge. It simply reached one dripping hand toward the bed and lifted the wooden box I'd been about to open. The fishing line snapped like thread. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph, yellowed and curled at the edges. The thing held it out to me like an offering. I didn't want to look. But the note was still there on the floor, and another one materialized beside it before I could turn away. Take it, Jordan. This is the last guest. He looked too. My hand moved without my permission. The photo was cold and damp. In it, a man, maybe 30, same build as me, stood on the dock outside this exact cabin at night. Fog everywhere. His eyes were wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Behind him, something tall and wet was stepping out of the lake. And on the porch, just visible in the background, another figure that looked exactly like the man himself, only smiling. The resemblance hit me like a fist. Not just build, the face. The same crooked nose I saw in the mirror every morning. The same scar on the left eyebrow from a bar fight in my 20s. The creature made a sound, then a low, bubbling gurgle that might have been laughter or speech. It pointed one long finger at the photo, then at me, then back at the broken window. 15th note appeared on the bed behind me. You're seeing the pattern now. Every guest becomes the next visitor. But you're different. You have more guilt to feed on. 16th instruction. Go back to the kitchen. The box stays here. It has work to do. I backed out of the bedroom slowly, eyes locked on the thing. It didn't follow. It simply turned toward the bed and began unfolding the quilt with deliberate, almost gentle movements, like it was tucking someone in. The sound of wet fabric dragging across sheets made my stomach twist. The hallway felt longer than it had any right to. Every step left bloody footprints. The notes were waiting for me on the kitchen table now, a fresh stack glowing under the single bulb. The temperature in the cabin had dropped again. My breath fogged with every exhale. Outside, more footsteps were circling the house. 3 sets now, maybe 4, all of them wet, all of them patient. I sat down hard at the table because the new note told me to. My hands left red smears on the wood. 17th instruction. Open the drawer under the sink. Take out what's inside. Read it, then burn it in the wood stove. I pulled the drawer open. Inside was a single envelope, thick and cream-colored, sealed with old wax. My name was on the front in Emily's handwriting. Not the neat script of the notes, her real looping cursive that I would know anywhere. The postmark was dated 3 weeks after she left me, the day she lost the baby. My fingers tore the seal before my brain could stop them. Inside was a letter. Her letter. Jordan, I didn't tell you because I knew you'd find a way to make it about you. The baby was gone before I even made it to the clinic. Stress, they said. Your stress? I'm not coming back. Don't look for me. The last thing I want is for you to carry this too. But you will anyway, won't you? E. The paper trembled in my hands. I hadn't known. I had spent months convincing myself she'd left because I was a monster, not because something inside her had died because of me. The guilt I thought I understood cracked open wider than the broken window. The creature was in the hallway now. I could hear its wet feet on the floorboards, slow and deliberate, coming toward the kitchen. It wasn't rushing. It was savoring. 18th note on the table. Burn it, Jordan. Burn the proof. 19th instruction. When the fire starts, look out the kitchen window. Just once. It's time you saw what's waiting on the dock. I crumpled the letter and shoved it into the wood stove. The kindling caught fast, flames licking up around Emily's words until they blackened and curled. The heat felt good against my freezing skin for about 3 seconds. Then I stood up and walked to the window above the sink. I pulled the curtain back an inch. The dock was visible now, lit by some impossible moonlight cutting through the fog. 6 figures stood in a perfect line along the planks, all of them facing the cabin. All of them dripping. The one in the center looked exactly like the man in the Polaroid. The one beside him looked like me. Same jacket, same haircut, same defeated slump of the shoulders. And at the very end of the line, something smaller and rounder in the belly. Emily's silhouette, but wrong. Waterlogged, eyes black. They weren't moving, they were waiting. The creature stepped into the kitchen behind me. I felt the cold radiate off it, smelled the lake rot and the ghost of Emily's perfume. A new note appeared on the windowsill right in front of my face. 20th instruction, close the curtain, go sit on the couch. 21st, tell the story out loud, the real one. Every detail you've never said to anyone. If you leave anything out, they come inside. I let the curtain fall. My legs carried me to the couch on autopilot. The creature followed and lowered itself into the leather chair by the fireplace like it belonged there. The wet stains it left on the cushion spread slowly outward. I started talking because the alternative was worse. I told it everything. The way I'd raised my voice that night until the neighbors called the cops. The cabinet I'd slammed so hard the dishes inside shattered. The words I'd thrown at Emily like knives. Maybe you'd be better off without me. Maybe the kid would too. The way I'd watched her pack her bag through the cracked bedroom door and done nothing to stop her. The voicemail I deleted the next day where she told me she was bleeding and scared and I never called back. Every word hurt more than the glass in my hands. The creature listened without moving, head tilted, water still dripping onto the floor in a steady rhythm that matched my heartbeat. The notes kept appearing on the coffee table, each one shorter now, just little encouragement. Good. Keep going. You're almost there. When I finally ran out of words, my voice raw and broken, the creature stood up. It walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out onto the porch. The fog swallowed it immediately, but I heard the footsteps join the others on the dock. For a moment, the cabin was silent except for the crackling of the wood stove. Then the 20-second note appeared directly in my lap. 20-second instruction. You have until sunrise to decide. You can stay inside and finish the instructions, or you can walk down to the dock and join them. The choice is yours, Jordan. But the last guest chose the dock. So did the one before him. And the one before that. They're all still waiting for you to make the same mistake. I stared at the paper. The cut on my palm had started bleeding again, dripping onto the note and smearing the ink. Outside, the line of figures on the dock hadn't moved, but I could feel them watching through the curtains. The pressure in my chest was unbearable now, not just fear, something deeper. The guilt had been weaponized, turned into a living current that pulled me toward the door. Every memory I'd just spoken aloud was a hook buried in my ribs, and the things on the dock were reeling me in. I stood up. The floorboards felt softer under my boots, almost spongy, like the cabin itself was starting to give way. I walked to the front door on legs that didn't feel like mine anymore. My hand hovered over the knob. A final note slid under the door from the outside, stopping against my boot. 23rd instruction. If you open this door, the instructions end. The real part begins. But if you stay inside and burn every note in the stove, the fog might lift by morning. The last guest burned the notes. He still walks the dock every night. I looked down at the growing pile on the floor. Hundreds of them now. Every secret I'd ever kept. Every shame I'd buried. Written out in perfect black ink. The creature, or one of them, was standing on the porch again. I could see its shadow through the frosted glass panel in the door. It raised one dripping hand and knocked twice. Polite, patient, the pressure crested. My hand closed around the knob, but I didn't turn it. Instead, I walked back to the kitchen, gathered every note I could carry, and fed them into the wood stove one by one. The flames roared higher, paper, curling and blackening, secrets turning to ash. The temperature in the cabin rose slightly. The dripping sounds outside slowed. For the first time since the first note appeared, I felt something like control. Then the 24th note materialized on top of the stove itself, untouched by the flames. Smart, but you missed one. It was the very first note. The one that had started everything. Jordan, close the curtains in the living room. Do not turn on the porch light. Whatever you do, do not look toward the dock tonight. I stared at it. The handwriting was mine. My own handwriting. The creature knocked again. 3 times this time, louder. And somewhere deep in the fog, I heard Emily's voice calling my name. Soft and forgiving and impossible. The pressure never really left. It just changed shape. The knock came again. 3 measured raps against the front door, polite as a neighbor asking to borrow sugar. Not loud, not angry, just patient. The kind of patience that had waited in the lake for years and could wait one more night if it had to. I stood frozen in the kitchen with the last note still pinched between my fingers, my own handwriting staring back at me like a confession I hadn't written yet. Jordan, close the curtains in the living room. Do not turn on the porch light. Whatever you do, do not look toward the dock tonight. The ink was fresh, the paper warm. My own loops on the J, the same slight pressure I always put on the downstrokes. When I was trying to stay calm, I hadn't written it. I knew I hadn't. But the note didn't care what I knew. Outside, Emily's voice drifted through the fog again, soft, forgiving, the way it used to sound when she was trying to talk me down from one of my rages. Jordan, come on out. It's okay. The water's not cold once you're in it. My stomach twisted so hard I tasted bile. The creature on the porch shifted its weight. I heard the wet creak of the boards, the slow drip, drip, drip of lake water hitting the welcome mat. The line of figures on the dock was still there. I could feel them even with the curtains drawn. 6 silhouettes, 6 waiting shapes. One of them wearing my jacket. One of them shaped like the life I'd destroyed. I crumpled the note and fed it into the wood stove. The flames caught it greedily, curling the edges black. For a second, the cabin felt almost normal again. The crackle of fire, the smell of pine smoke, the single bulb above the sink, throwing its weak yellow circle. Then another note materialized on the counter right beside the stove, untouched by the heat. 25th instruction. You can't burn what you haven't written yet. 26th. Open the front door. They've been waiting long enough. My hand hovered over the knob. The metal was ice cold. I could see my reflection in the frosted glass panel. Pale face, wild eyes, blood from the glass cuts drying on my cheeks like war paint. Behind me, the cabin felt alive now, breathing in time with the things outside. Every floorboard I'd stepped on earlier seemed to remember the weight of my guilt and hold it against me. I didn't open the door. Instead, I walked back to the living room on legs that felt borrowed. The leather chair by the fireplace was still wet from where the creature had sat. The stain had spread into the shape of a person, arms resting on the armrests like it was still there. I sank onto the couch and stared at the cold hearth. More notes started appearing, on the coffee table on the floor, fluttering down from the ceiling like black snow. Each one shorter than the last, each one cutting deeper. You told her the baby would be better off dead? You never called the clinic to check on her? You deleted the voicemail where she said she was scared? I read them all out loud because the last instruction had said I had to. My voice cracked on every word. The guilt wasn't a weight anymore. It was a living current, pulling me toward the door the same way the lake pulled the fog inland. Every secret I fed the fire made the air thinner, the voices clearer. Emily called my name again, closer this time. Jordan, I forgave you a long time ago. Just come see the doc. You'll understand. The creature knocked once more, then the others joined in. 6 sets of knuckles against wood and glass and siding, polite, rhythmic, a symphony of patience. 27th note on the arm of the couch. You're almost at the end of the instructions. The last guest made it to 29 before he walked out. He's the one in the middle of the line now. He looks peaceful. You could too. I stood up. My boots left bloody prints on the rug as I moved toward the front door again. The knob felt heavier this time, like it had grown roots into the wood. I turned it slowly. The deadbolt slid back with a sound like a bone snapping. The chain lock came off last, rattling like loose teeth. Cold air rushed in the moment the door cracked open. Fog poured across the threshold like smoke, thick and wet and smelling of Emily's perfume and lake silt. The creature was standing right there on the welcome mat. Up close, it looked almost familiar. Same height as me, same slope to the shoulders, same way of standing like it was carrying something too heavy. Its face was a ruin of sagging flesh and black hollows, but the eyes were mine. Not copies, many mine. The same tired hazel I saw every morning in the mirror. It didn't speak. It simply stepped aside, leaving a clear path down the porch steps toward the dock. I walked out. The fog swallowed the cabin behind me instantly. The wooden planks of the porch felt spongy under my boots, like they'd been underwater for years. Every step left a perfect wet footprint that didn't evaporate. The path to the dock was shorter than I remembered, 20 yards of gravel that felt like miles. The notes kept coming even out here, appearing in my pockets, in my hands, tucked into the collar of my shirt. 28th instruction: keep walking. Don't look back at the cabin. It doesn't belong to you anymore. The line of figures on the dock came into focus as I got closer. They stood perfectly still, water streaming off them in sheets that never seemed to end. The one in the center was the man from the Polaroid, empty eyes, mouth frozen in that silent scream. Beside him was the version of me I'd seen through the window earlier. My jacket, my haircut, my defeated slump. And at the very end, smaller and rounder, the shape that had once been Emily. Her belly still swollen the way it had been at 6 weeks, waterlogged, eyes black. But she was smiling the gentle smile she used when she knew I was about to apologize. They parted for me without a word. I stepped onto the dock. The wood was slick and cold. The lake lapped at the pilings below with soft, hungry sounds. The fog was thinner here, just enough to see the water stretching out into nothing. 29th note appeared in my hand. Final instruction: sit down at the end of the dock, face the water. Tell the lake everything you left out inside. When you're finished, the fog will lift and you can go home. I sat. The wood was so cold it burned. The figures arranged themselves behind me in a perfect semicircle. I could feel their dripping presence like a second skin. Emily's shape moved closer until she was right beside me, her wet hand resting on my shoulder. It felt exactly like her hand used to, small, warm once, now freezing and heavy with lake water. I started talking again, louder this time. I told the lake about the nights I lay awake hating myself but still blaming her. About the way I'd checked her phone after she left, looking for proof she was the one who ruined us. About the relief I felt for half a second when I heard she'd lost the baby, because it meant I didn't have to be a father to a child I'd already failed. Every ugly, selfish thought poured out of me until my voice was raw, and the tears on my face mixed with the fog. When I finally stopped, the lake was perfectly still, no ripples, no sound except my own ragged breathing. The note in my hand changed. The ink rearranged itself while I watched. Thank you, Jordan. You did better than most. 30th instruction: stand up, walk back to your car, drive away. The cabin is ready for the next guest now. I stood. The figures behind me didn't move. Emily's hand slipped off my shoulder with a soft, wet sound. I turned and walked back up the path. The fog parted for me like it had been waiting for this moment. The cabin lights were still on, warm and inviting through the mist. The front door stood wide open exactly as I'd left it. My car was right where I'd parked it, keys still in the ignition. I climbed in, started the engine, and backed down the gravel drive without looking in the rearview mirror. The tires crunched over stones that sounded too much like bones. The road appeared ahead, narrow, winding, trees pressing in close. I drove slowly at first, then faster as the fog thinned. Dawn was breaking by the time I reached the main highway. Pale gray light filtered through the pines. I rolled the window down and let the cold mountain air slap me awake. My hands stopped shaking, and the cuts on my palms had clotted. For the first time in years, the guilt felt quieter, not gone, just quieter. I reached into my jacket pocket for my phone to check the time. A single folded note was waiting there. I pulled it out with fingers that had gone numb again. The handwriting was mine. Fresh ink, still warm. Jordan, you left something behind on the dock. It's waiting for the next guest now. But it remembers you. It always will. Drive safe. See you soon. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. The car drifted onto the shoulder before I caught it. In the rearview mirror, far behind me, I could have sworn I saw the cabin lights still glowing through the trees, even though I'd driven miles. And beside the road, just for a second, a smaller shape, standing in the fog, rounder in the belly, smiling. I crumpled the note and threw it out the window. It caught on the breeze and disappeared into the pines. The road stretched ahead, empty and ordinary. No more fog, no more notes. But when I reached for the radio to drown out the silence, my hand brushed something folded in the cup holder. Another note. Same handwriting, same warm paper. 31st instruction. Keep driving, Jordan. The lake is patient. The dock is patient. And the next guest checks in at sunset. They'll need someone who understands the instructions now. You're already better at this than you think. I kept driving. The sun rose higher. The mountains gave way to foothills, then flat land. My phone finally got signal again. Texts from my sister, missed calls from Mike. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't play any of them, because somewhere behind me, back in the Cascades, the cabin lights were still on. The dock was still waiting, and the guilt I thought I'd left on the water was sitting right here in the passenger seat, folded neatly, written in my own hand. The fog never really lifted. It just followed me home.